Hello everyone, I am Ashutosh Mahto from Mindfire Solutions, and today I am going to discuss about some of the basic features in JavaScript. These are very important features but we usually overlook during the learning phase of JavaScript. This is very important thing and let's start with it. Before going further, as we all know that JavaScript is one of the most important language now in web development. In every web development, it's most used programming language. But also, there's a fact that it's world's most misunderstood programming language. So why it is so misunderstood among us? What happens that when we start our learning, uh, we start with either C or any object-oriented programming language like C Sharp or C++ or Java. When we come to JavaScript, the semantics are same as we see in C. So we think and we assume that some part of this language too will be same as in C. And that assumptions lead to some confusion when we start writing JavaScript. So I'm going to discuss some of the features those are different from those languages. So today I'm going to discuss about scopes in JavaScript, how scopes are defined in JavaScript. Then we will talk about hoisting and then objects, how we declare objects, what are the objects in JavaScript, and how we define functions. Then one of the most important and confusing part in JavaScript, that is the closure. And we will discuss some basics about prototype. I will not go deeper into prototype. And then finally we will see some of the basic practices. So let's start with the scopes. So in JavaScript, everything that is defined without a var is a global. As we all know that whenever we define a variable, we use var keyword. So if suppose we left the var keyword, that will not affect our program, but it will make it as a global. And also every global variable or object can be accessed through window.variablename. The first thing is that we have to include var whenever we are declaring any variables, any variable. And if it is global, we can access it through window object. And unlike C in JavaScript, even if the semantics are same in JavaScript, but JavaScript does not have block level scope. JavaScript is having function level scope. So what does that actually mean? Let's see first. Uh, I will be showing the demos through Firebug console. This is a very useful tool to debug and run JavaScript codes. So I'll be using this tool. So our first code is as we have said that we can access this through window object. So this is language variable which is assigned with value JavaScript, and now I'm accessing it through window dot language. So any variable, since this is now in global scope, so we can access through window object. Now uh, I'm declaring a function and checking whether I can access it through window or not. So here I can see that this topic is inside this get function. So I can see that there is the declaration context of this topic variable is inside this function. So this became a local variable to this get primary topic function. So that's why we cannot get this topic from Windows object. And if we remove this window, then also we cannot get this, because this is not a global. As you can see, that topic is not defined. So we can see that topic has a local scope within this function. And one more example. Now, there are two similar programs written in C and JavaScript. In the first program, what we are doing, that we are assigning a variable x equal to 1, and then if it is true, then we are assigning a variable 2 and then printing the value. So what happens in C, that in every block level it has a local scope. So whatever we have declared here, it will print 1. Since x equal to 1, it will print 1. But in this if block, it has a local scope, so it will again define another variable x, which has a local scope, and it will print as 2. And then outside this block, when we print x, then it will take the global variable's value. So it will take the value of x that is defined at the first line. So this is 1, so it will print 1. So our output will be 1, then 2, then 1. 2 because it is in local scope. Now let's see the same program in JavaScript. So this x is a global variable which has a value 1 and it prints 1. Okay, if it is true, then we have again redefined this where x equal to 2, and then console.log x equal to 2, so it prints 2. And now after we come out of this block, we are again printing this value. So what should be the output? According to this program, if you see, the local scope ends with this block, if block. If we consider the same in JavaScript, we will be wrong, and here we are getting output as 2, which should be 1 as in C. So we see that there is no block level scope in JavaScript. We have function level scope, which we have seen in this code itself. You can see that this has a local scope and we cannot get this variable. So this is what happens in JavaScript, that it does not have a block level scope, but it has a function level scope. So we have to be careful while defining variables. So now come to the next topic, hoisting. Hoisting is one of the most important features in JavaScript. Whenever we define any variable or any function, it is hoisted to the top of its declaration context. So we just talked about declaration context, that it has block level scope or function level. So in JavaScript it has function level scope. So we have a program in which we are having a variable name and we are assigning value Ramesh, and now have a function that show name, and if this name is undefined, then again we will redefine this variable name with and initialize with Suresh, and then we will print this name. Now let's run this program. What happens in this program? So we have this program written over here. Now we run this program. So it is Ramesh. Now we are calling this show name, and since it's a variable and we know that it has a local scope here, so this name has a local scope, so this name will be a local. But since name is not defined above this line, so it should take this global value. So it should take this global value, and since it is already defined, so it will not come inside this if block, and it will print as name. So this is what we assume if we consider other programs, or we can say that sometimes it will give error. But let's run this one. So we are not getting any error, so that means that we have to check other value. But here we are getting Suresh as output, but we were thinking that Ramesh will be the output. So how it happened? What happens actually, that when JavaScript passes this program, then it treats it as where name equal to undefined. This happens that in every declaration context, this name has been hoisted to the top with a value undefined. since here it is undefined. So now when we come to the next line, it finds that this name is undefined, so it redefines this name, and we are getting Suresh. So this is what hoisting. And let's see another example. uh, Sorry, this is for hoisting. And let's see another example where show name 2. Let's copy the same function with some different variable name. Let's remove this one first, and then name 2, name 2, name 2. This is also name 2. Now we are calling, as we have called the function over here, we are calling show name 2 over here. What happens now? So we are getting a type error that show name is not a function. But how then it is executed over here? Now let's check this one, whether it is actually working or not. So this is working now. You can see that it is giving output. It is not throwing any error. So what happened? What happened over here? Why this is showing error, but in this case it is not showing error, even if we are calling this function before declaring this function. So as we all know that the function has been this function declaration has been hoisted to the top of this declaration context. So since it has global declaration context, so it has been hoisted to the top, that is over here. And similarly show name has been hoisted to the top over here with undefined. But since it's a variable, so this is undefined, but this function, whole function has been hoisted to the top, and so show name does not throw any error. So this is what happens, and we have to be careful while declaring variables. We have to usually we have to declare all the variables at the top of its declaration context. This will be a good practice. So let's move to the next topic. Objects. Objects is very important in JavaScript, and this builds the object oriented concepts in JavaScript too. So objects are accept number, string, boolean, null, and undefined. Everything is object, whether it is an array, whether it is a regular expression, all are and also even functions are objects. So everything except this number, string, boolean, null, and undefined are objects. Objects can be created using object literals or through object constructor, and objects are usually key value pair. We will see this. These objects are usually a key value pair, and we can define this as a key value pair through object literals. So let's check first how can we define an object. So let's first clear the console and refresh the DOM. Now we are defining an object obj1 equal to this is expression, or we can say that object literal, and another is obj2 equal to new object. Now we can assign some of the members. Here either we can assign like obj1 dot first name equal to Satish, and similarly over here obj2 dot first name equal to Ramesh. So we have defined a member variable. Now we define a member function obj1 dot get full name equal to function, then return this dot first name plus this dot last name. And let's do the same thing with this one, obj2 dot get full name. Now we don't have last name over here, so another way to create a member variable is like this. And in literal we can add it as last name like this. Now let's run this one. We are getting full name from object name, object 1, and then we are getting through object 2. So we are accessing all the variables now. So we got the output, first one and second one as expected. So what happened over here, that in expression everything we can put inside it as a key value pair. We have a key and we have a value, and we can also access this through dot variable. Like we can say that console.log last name obj1 dot last name, and this is the output. So we can access this anything within this through dot operator, or we can access anything using this notation. So let's check this one whether it is working or not. So this is working. Okay, so here we can see that this can be treated as a key value pair, or we can say in more in a better way that it can be treated as an associative array. So associative arrays are some sort of dictionaries or abstract data type that can be accessed through keys. Its values can be accessed through keys. So here we can say that obj2 or obj1 are some abstract data type. We can access its members through this key. So this works as associative array. So let's check whether function works or not. obj2 dot get full name, and then this one, and it's fine, it's working too. So every members can be accessed, each and every member can be accessed through this this syntax. So this array type syntax, but there is a basic difference between arrays and this object. This is not an array, this is not actually an array. It can be treated as an array, and we treat it as associative array because it is the same type of data structure, but there is a basic difference between an array and this one. We will see it later. Now objects can be used as associative arrays but are not actually any type of array. So these are two different things. So let's see what is the difference between these two. Let's first remove this one and refresh the console, and let's see. Now here I am defining an object and I am defining an array. So let's check whether an array can be used as an object or not. So you can see that uh, you're very familiar with object now. You can very well analyze this code. But let's see this one. What happens over here? We are defining a new array that created an instance of array. This can also be written as var equal to this. This will be same. This is just expression and this is through the constructor array. Now we are putting the member as first name and assigning a value, and we are again with the same object like structure through dot operator, another person dot last name, and we are assigning the value, and then we are setting the function. So this is what the function is, and we executed this one. So this is a similar structure. So we can say that yes, this is same, there is no difference, but the difference lies inside. We cannot get the length property. Console.log person.length. And another is another person.length. So we are trying to access the array's inbuilt property. So here we can see that this is undefined. Person has undefined. That means it does not have length property. Now let's check another person. Now what is this? This is giving length equal to 0, but we have members. We have 3 members. First is first name, second is last name, third is get real name. But what happened? Why this is showing us as 0? Now let's create an array like where array numbers equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then again check the length. Sorry, check the length over here. Let's see. So this is what happens, that now it gives us the length as an array. Now let's compare these two. What happens actually? Console.log another person, and now console.log array numbers. Let's run this one, and we get that we are having we are having indexed members in this array, but we are not having any indexed member in the above object or array. Another person, we have declared it as array, but we are not having any indexed member. This is because this is actually an object. Array is also an object, so it keeps the member variables like this, and it has another value of indexed members. So we can also put the same thing with array numbers to array numbers dot count equal to 4. Let's say count is a member of array. So we have executed this one, and now check console.log then array. Now we can see that it has a count member variable. So this has indexed values as well as a member which is defined as count. So we can see the differences over here. So array is not actually an object, it has its own properties. It has its own ways of execution. So the thing is, whenever sometimes most of us use arrays and as an object, but we do not create objects through its constructor. We create through arrays. So we have to avoid such type of declaration, because it takes extra properties like this one, and we are not going to use these things. Like in this object another person, we haven't used anything that is indexed. It has a container that contains indexed members, but we are not using this one. Also, it has some extra functions like length and some other features, but we are not using those things. So until and unless we use those things, it it's all waste. We don't need those things, then why should we declare those things? So this is what uh, this is a best practice, that whenever, until and unless we need an actual array, we should not use an array. We have objects, we can use objects. So this is the difference between array and objects. Objects can be treated as associative arrays, but these are not actually arrays. Now next thing is, objects can link to another object through there's a mistake, create. So object dot create, this is the base of inheritance in object oriented JavaScript. So this will create a new object and keep a link to the old object. If any property is not available in new object, it will be looked into old object. So this is what happens in inheritance, that all the properties are inherited from the base class. So this is the same concept, and let's check this one. Let's first clear these things. Now let's create an object where obj1 so this is an object which I have created. Now I am replicating this object where to equal to object dot create. Now obj1 and console dot log obj1 console dot log obj2. Now we run this one. So we get two objects. First is object1, first is object2, and both have same members. But what is the difference? This one is object1, and now go back and check object2. Now we have a proto. There is a proto link inside this object. This proto link is a connection between two objects. This is the hidden link between two objects, and this is the prototype which I was discussing at the starting, and I will be discussing it later too. But the thing is, whenever we create an object using object.create, it copies the members from object1 to object2. Now let's create obj2 dot age equal to this and run this one, and now we again log these two, and we can see the difference over here, that the base object1 does not have this age property, right? But it has age property, and we know that in obj2 we have not declared any member variables, but it has been inherited through this one. because it has a link to object 1. And if we do not find any key value, any key in object 2, then it goes to this link object 2 and it fetches the values from here. Now let's modify the things. obj2 dot first name, and then again first run this and then again execute this one. Now we can see that object 2, sorry, I missed this one. We run this one and then we see what is the value. Now we can see that this is different, right? This is different, but it has a link thing that has actual name. So this is a link, but not actually it has its link, but it is not actually this object. So this is what happens in objects. So this is the base of inheritance, and we will see how this can be helpful in object-oriented JavaScript in further sessions. So I will not go much deeper into this one. This is the I'm just showing the basic features of an object, and how we can use this one. So let's move further. Now the next topic is function. So as we all know that in JavaScript, functions are very much important. So functions, as I have already mentioned, that functions are also objects. Functions are, in any programming language, executable piece of code, a piece of code that can be executed as a batch. And in JavaScript, functions are invocable objects. As I have already mentioned that functions are objects, but it has a property that it can be invoked. Like objects, functions can carry properties, and methods can be copied, deleted, and augmented. So these are the properties of function, that as we can use an object, we can also assign properties and methods to these functions. And as objects can be deleted, copied, and augmented, we can also do the same operations with functions. Now functions can be passed as a parameter. As we know that objects can be passed as parameter, we can assign values to objects like that. So the same thing can be done with functions, and functions return some values. So every function returns a value, and if it does not return any value, then it returns undefined. And functions are first class citizens in JavaScript. Now this is very important term, that first class citizens. It has all the features, it has all its functions features, as well as the objects feature too. And we can assign the properties, methods, we can build up anything through this function. So this is called as first class citizens in JavaScript. So let's see how we define a function. So there are two ways we can define a function. We have function declaration, we have function expression. Let's see first what are these. As you would be very familiar with functions, and if you will be using any other language, C++, everywhere functions are used. So we can define a function like function say hello, and whatever it is, like this. Now as I have already said that if it does not return anything, okay, then it displays as undefined. So currently I have just called this function. Now I am executing this one. say hello, and here you can see that it is printing the value as well as it is returning a value undefined. Now let's check whether what it returns. Return 1. And now redefine this one and execute this. So we can see that if it is not returning anything, that it simply returns undefined. And this is function declaration. Now how we define as function expression, where say now the same thing. So executing this one gives the same output, so it's fine. So we can define the functions with the same. These two are the syntax for defining a function. So here what happens, as we have already seen in hoisting as an example, that this whole function does not depend on the order of execution. Like I can put it over here, whether it has been declared or not, it will be executed. So so over here uh, let's clear this one and execute this one. So it is working, and now let's remove this one and run this one. So the basic difference between these two is uh, irrespective of its order of declaration, it can be executed in a JavaScript program. But in case of function expression, we have to first declare this one, then only we can execute this function. So this is the basic difference between these two, and this structure, this expression is very much useful if we are building a prototype, or if we are using some namespaces, then it will be very useful for us. How this can be happen, this will how we build prototypes through this, we will see later. And next things are anonymous function. So we have seen that there's anonymous function. So what is anonymous function? Anonymous function means a function that does not have name. In case of function expression, we put anonymous functions that does not have name, and it just returns the value if it is returning, and it assigns this function, the whole function, to this variable. So this function does not have any name. We cannot access this function, we cannot execute this function, but we can execute this function, and it is linked to this one actually. So now can we put a name over here? Yes, we can put a name. And in which case this can be used, a named function expression. So let's have an example. Now now this named function expression can be very useful when we build a recursive function. In that case, we usually end up with some confusion, some sort of confusion, if we will use this same name. So we use this one, a name function, and this name function can be used over here. So let's check this one. This is fine. Now we access this name function outside. We are getting fact is not defined. Let's check whether it is defined or not. So this is defined. Now let's check whether it is defined inside or not. Obviously it is defined because we are accessing over here. Now we define this one and now run this one. Now we run this one and we get the value, and we can see that this executed and we can access this value, and it is showing this, and it has been logged as many times it is encountered over here. Okay, so what happens that we can access this named function locally, but we cannot access this outside this function's context. So this is the basic difference between these named expression functions and regular functions. So if we are defining a named expression, we cannot use this one outside its declaration context. So we can use it over here uh, in in recursive functions. Now another type of functions we have are self-executing functions. Self-executing functions are the functions which are executed themselves. Like for example, let's first clear this console. Sorry. Now we define a function and we run this function, but this is not executed until and unless we execute this function explicitly. Then only it executes. But a self-executing function is a function that executes itself. For example, this one. Now we run this one and it is executed. So with the declaration. So this is the syntax of self-executed function, and we can pass self-executed functions variables like so we can see that we can pass the values over here and we can use these things in self-executing function. So this is one of the very important structures of executing functions. This is being used in most of the libraries that we use in JavaScript, and this is the base of as you can see in jQuery. jQuery uses something like uh, this one, like this. So what is happening actually over here? This builds up a local scope, right? So in this case, whatever we are passing over here and whatever we are declaring over here, that can be isolated from outer code. Okay, so this is very important structure while we create our module, that has to make isolated from other scripts, other codes. So this is very important structure when we can write things, and we can define the things. Like for example, suppose where my name Okay, and now we are accessing window my name. We have passed the window object, we have passed the document object, and now we are using console. Okay, I am already using console.log. Sorry. Uh, Here it is printing this one. So this is what happening, that in window I can get this one. Since this is a global variable, I pass the global variable, I set it into the window object, and now I am passing window object and I can access to this one. So anything, any property of a DOM can be passed through this one, and I can isolate my whole module from other codes. So this is what is being used in most of the modules. So this is very important structure, and self-executing functions are very much important in JavaScript. So now move to the next thing. Closures are very important thing in JavaScript, and sometimes it is very much confusing. So let's see what happens in closures. Closures are actually local variables for a function. Those are kept alive after the function has returned. As we all know that as and when the function returns the all the local scope variables are deallocated from memory. So this is what happens in general. But in closures, a closure is a stack frame that keeps the memory as it is not deallocated when the function returns, as if a stack frame were mallocated inside of being on a stack. So what this actually means, let's see an example over here. We have a closure. Let's clear first this one, and now let's check what happens over here. In outer function, I am defining this outer function as a function that takes a variable x, and then we define a temp, and I am returning the addition of variables. Correct. Now, uh, as and when we execute this function, in as we know that this is local to this function, and this x is local to this function. So this local variable should be deallocated from memory. And when we execute these things, what happens? It is giving as 19. So in outer function, it sets temp as 6, it sets x as 3, so 3 plus 6 equal to 9, and then we are getting 10 equal to 19. So it is giving 19, but since it has been executed at this step, so temp should not be there and x should not be there, and it should give some different one, but the actual output is 19. So what actually happens? Why this is happening? So let's compare these two functions. First, outer function, simply, and then we log this new function. Now let's see what is inside this one. We have a prototype. Okay, we will see it later, and we have a closure. So it keeps the closure variables, that every function keeps the closure that is defined in its parent. Let's check this one, and here we can see that temp and x, which are not the part of this function. We know that function y does not have temp and y, okay, declared inside this one. Sorry, temp and x does not exist in this function, but this exists outside this function. But even these are part of this function. So how this happened? This is actually the property of closure, that it is this whenever a child function is declared inside a outer function, the child function remembers its the parents members as a closure. So the memory is not deallocated over here for these two variables, temp and x. So this is very important thing while building private variables, even in private modules. How can we use this? So this can be treated as private, and when we have to return these values, we can set a public method that returns these values. So here we can set uh, we can set isolation over here. So this is one of the most important thing as closure, and this can be also used in various modules. So this is what closure is. This can be understood when you will use it actually in some modules or somewhere. Then you can also prevent this making local. So like we use in hosting, we can see that. So sorry, in hosting also we can see that we can build up a local scope over here and return the actual value from the parent function. So this can avoid hosting in case of functions, and also avoid the global scoping like block level scopings. So this is the thing, and let's move to next one. Now prototype. Prototype is the base of object-oriented programming in JavaScript. Every function contains a prototype object that can be changed through its constructor. So we already see that there was a hidden link proto inside linked object. Now let's see this example. What actually prototype is. So whenever we create an object, so every object has a prototype, and this prototype is a link to its constructor. So let's run this one. We first build up a person object, and we set a name to the prototype. And now console.log first, console.log, then person. Let's first check this one. So this is a prototype, and it has two members, constructor and get name. So we can see that this is the property of prototype, that get name. And now we can also check dot prototype. So this is an object having a function get name and a default member constructor, which is also a type of function. So now what is the use of this prototype? Through this prototype we can build a class like structure. For example, let's define an object that person1 equal to new person. That will create a object person1, and we can check this one. It is executing the function get name, right? And now we define another object and then this one. this is the same, but it has a different name. We can console.log this one. So this has Ramesh, this has name, and both have get name function. So through this prototype we can get the members in all the objects which we are creating. Now let's add a member to person1 individually. Now we added a person1, and let's compare these two. So when we added a member variable inside person1 explicitly, we get that it is not uh, it is not added to person2 because this is a different object, and person1 is very different object. It has another variable age. Now let's add a prototype, since we already have a prototype and we are adding it to the prototype. So we added a prototype, a member to the prototype, and now we are comparing these two. So we are getting there. If we set a new member into the prototype, then it is added to both of the objects. So if we add members individually, then it is not reflected to other one, but if we add to prototype, then it is reflected to both the objects. Now change person1 city, and now compare these two. So here we can see that in first object we change the value, but it is not reflected into this one. So this is what happening over here, that this prototype is common, but these member variables are now individual. For this one, this member variable city is differently containing the values, and for the person2 it is containing differently. So prototype is a common class like structure, and we can set the member variables and member functions, and that will be common to all the objects. But if we assign the member variable or member function individually to the objects, that would not reflect to any other object. So this is the basic feature of prototype, and this can be used while inheriting and while creating another object. So this makes the base of object oriented programming in JavaScript. So this is what a prototype is. So now let's go to some best practices. As we all know that in ECMA5 we have a new keyword strict that will avoid the hoisting and scope problems in JavaScript. And always we should use JSLint to check our code whether it is syntactically correct or not. And always use var while declaring variables to avoid unnecessary globals. This is the very important thing. We usually miss vars, but it still works, but we have to avoid these things. Declare all the variables at the top of its function to reduce the hosting problems. So and another thing is maximize the use of function expression. We should maximize the use of function expressions, and because we can make it modular. Second thing is we can treat it as object. As we can see that here we can treat it as an object like this get name. So obj1 dot get name dot first name. Sorry, this one is person1. So we can set these things. And now let's console.log, then we have person1, and let's check what happened. Get name, right? So get name has a property first name. So we can change the member variables over here, and we can set inner members also. So this is what happens when we use these function expressions. So function expressions are very much useful, uh, and always use semicolon as delimiter, as we know that even if we do not use semicolon, that program still runs, but we should use semicolon as delimiter. And last thing, never think of objects as a kind of array, and never declare an object as an array, because it carries an extra baggage of arrays properties and arrays methods which are not used in objects. Until and unless we are using actually index members and array properties and methods, we should not declare an object as an array. So these are some of the basic practices. There are much more thing, but these are simple things, and we should take care of these things at the very basic level. So you can check these books for better understanding of JavaScript, the good parts from Douglas Crockford, then JavaScript, the definitive guide from David Flanagan, and professional JavaScript for developers from Nicholas Zekas, and blogs. There are so many blogs, articles, and in the question in Stack Overflow. So this is all about some basic things in JavaScript, and so this is all. Thank you.